one of the super crazy things that I discovered 10 days ago was that Twitter was being scammed to the tune of $60 million a year for SMS texts, not counting North America. So I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? Like, there's $60 million of SMS text. Yeah, Twitter is paying telcos. Basically, there are telcos who are not being super honest out there in other parts of the world who were basically gaming the system and running like two-factor authentication SMS texts over and over again and just creating a zillion bot accounts to literally run up the tab so that Twitter would SMS text them and Twitter would just pay them millions of dollars without even asking about it. You know, give people some perspective here. Twitter was tracking to spend about $5 billion next year.
We needed the trip to Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly. Because of the nature of this transaction, where there's $12.5 billion of debt and the Fed rate has been going crazy, there's on the order of $1.5 billion-ish of debt servicing that's required. So we're talking about like net cash outflow if you didn't make any changes of on the order of like $6.5 billion next year, with revenue probably tracking to $3 billion. That's like a negative cash flow situation of $3 billion a year. Not good, since Twitter has $1 billion in cash. That's why I spent the last 5 weeks cutting costs like crazy. The point I'm trying to make here is view count is already counted. Like it's already a thing that is happening. But view count currently, the issue is that it's going to Google Cloud instead of the on-prem stuff. The view count is making a call to Google Cloud in batches at a rate that is 2 orders of magnitude slower than what is needed to render it with the current pipe. Yes. That's the actual issue. So, but if you then say, okay, look, we don't care about it being real time because it's something like a like is being updated about every second or so. But if we say
on your tweets, yes. On most people's tweets, no.
No, I'm just saying like the update frequency is it's near real time. But the point I'm trying to make is like view counts are already counted. They're just being batched and being sent over a slow pipe to an analytics software on Google Cloud. Yeah. Whereas the likes are using the on-prem database. But you could that's like an arbitrary decision. It could use the on-prem database as well.
Yes.
So if it had not been an arbitrary decision to go off-prem to Google Cloud, then it would be trivial to add likes.
It would be considerably easier.
It wouldn't be onerous to add views. Especially if you're not like too precise about exactly how many views there were. If you like let it float a little bit, and you occasionally drop a view count, so it's because like we're not like trying to balance a bank book here. Then I think views actually like would be relatively easy. So
if views were in the same database as likes, yes, it would be easy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and It should be. It's absurd that views are on a totally different database in Google Cloud instead of the on-prem system. So anyway, that's sort of a unnecessary complexity. I mean, the Twitter stack right now is like basically combining the difficulties of 3 different worlds, which is running a complex real-time on-prem database that's in 3 data centers in Atlanta, one near in Oregon, and one in Sacramento. And Sacramento is like possibly the worst place to have a data center because it's hot. And then like the summer, it got so hot that the data center failed because the HVAC didn't work. But then in addition to that, you've got also using AWS, so using Amazon and using Google Cloud. So all 3 are required to operate Twitter. Sam Pilar has been helping out, and I think Sam was saying there was like some pretty nutty amount of data storage is actually analytics for app versions that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like I think it was like 15%, maybe 20%. It's like was literally logging data from apps that don't exist. It took me a few weeks to actually even wrap my head around it. Twitter's advertising is actually for the most part irrelevance optimizing. When I ask people who've used Twitter for a while, it's like, how many things have you bought on Twitter? The answer is usually nothing. But it's like, well, how many things did you buy on Instagram? Oh, I bought a whole bunch of stuff last week. It's like, well, don't you think it's interesting that you wouldn't have accidentally bought something on Twitter after all this time? And like the reason you haven't is because the ads are maximizing irrelevance. I feel like I'm stuck in a Douglas Adams novel. Um, it's like the spaceship was powered by maximum improbability. So like, well, you're like, wait a second, why on earth would you maximize irrelevance? Well, because the team was told to maximize the impression, the number of advertising impressions. So what happens if you try to maximize advertising impressions? Well, you actually are going to maximize irrelevance, because if somebody's spending 5 minutes on Twitter and 2 of those 5 minutes are spent clicking on an ad, you've now lost 40% of your impressions. Like head exploding emoji.
Dwell time is probably a much better signal for ads. What makes TikTok so good? They have dwell time on all the videos. The time you spend on an ad is probably better than whether you saw the ad or not. Though I somewhat disagree in the limit. If you had an ideal ML model trying to maximize impressions, I think you'd end up with someone who just scrolls Twitter and looks at the ads all day.
We want people to click on the ads. That's the whole point of having an ad, is so that you might buy something. And yet I see many ads that, in fact, most ads are not relevant. And when I ask people what are the concerns about Twitter, it's like, well, Twitter keeps showing me the same ad that I don't care about all the time.
When you run an ad campaign on Twitter, you can choose, I think. I'm not really sure what the backend does. I heard the backend tries to maximize money, but you can choose whether you want to run an impressions campaign or whether you want to run a clicks campaign.
Things have changed recently, basically since the acquisition. I was like, no, guys, we need to maximize relevance. And there actually has been good work in the direction of relevance optimization.
For questions on this, I'm super nerdy about ad tech stuff. I'm super curious how Twitter can compete with like Google and Facebook, just in terms of their identity network and how well they have like bucketed groups of interest to target. Like, how does Twitter compete?
Twitter can actually do arguably better for someone that has used Twitter for some period of time. So if you have used Twitter for, let's say, I don't know, a few weeks, and if you have like you're several hours in, the amount of signal that you have is high. You know what people, what topics people followed, what accounts people followed, what they liked, what they you can say, certainly view count. There's and a bunch of the stuff is actually used at Twitter for recommended tweets. What is called sometimes the home timeline. If you like, there's like a little stars icon in the upper right of the Twitter interface, and it'll say like for you or latest. So for you is recommended tweets. A lot of people don't even realize that the upper right stars icon is a way that you can switch between recommended tweets and accounts that you actually follow. I bet a lot of people on this call currently do not know that is what that stars icon does. But the recommended tweets are actually pretty good.
Home ML is much better than Ads ML. Home ML is using much larger models, many more features. The Ads ML is very rudimentary.
Yes, but essentially, they should be going through the same pipeline.
Yeah.
If Twitter can accurately recommend tweets to you that you don't explicitly follow, it can by the same token also show ads that are relevant to you.
So the way that a lot of platforms do ad sales and a lot of like purchasers expect ads isn't necessarily, I'm going to give you these ads and I trust you to serve them to the right people. It's usually almost the opposite, where it's, I want to target this group of people in this region who went to a Jiffy Lube in the last 72 days. That level of micro targeting is something a lot of ad buyers now expect. And like, it's a huge part of how CPMs can get so high on platforms like YouTube.
Regardless of whether they're targeted or not, if your goal is CPMs, you should have a very good idea that someone's going to click on an ad before you show it to them. And you can do this with good ML.
But sometimes these advertisers will serve entirely different versions of the same ad to different demographics.
Can you turn this guy off, please? He's just talking nonsense. Thanks. I've actually talked to the advertisers. I talked to major advertisers just this morning, and they were looking for, as you would expect, a return on investment. So that if they spend a certain amount of money, are they going to get a return in excess of the amount of money spent? Quite rational, not arbitrary or random. So, and I won't say who it is, but there are major advertisers who spent $60 million on Twitter this year. And they were like, we calculated the ROI. Actually, like another company helped them calculate the ROI. And Twitter was the lowest. And this is why they're having difficulty spending additional money on Twitter, because they're literally looking at the lowest ROI. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that's quite sensible. And then they were like, well, when this particular product is discussed in replies, wouldn't it make sense to, at that point, provide an ad that perhaps, since you are discussing this product, perhaps you would like to buy it? I'm like, yes, that would make total sense. We should, of course, do that.
Well,
They were like, yeah, that would be awesome. If you do that, then we will be glad to spend more advertising money.
so
Meaning that they were very rational and not arbitrary and random.
while in the limit, I agree with you, it would require retraining advertisers. And I'm not saying you can't do it, but advertisers have come to expect a lot of this micro-targeting stuff. Facebook pioneered a lot of it.
I think at the end of the day, if you can make a clear equivalence, if you spend amount X to generate profit Y, provided Y is greater than X, you should continue. And provided, if you've got good analytics that demonstrate that, whoever the advertiser is, you will succeed. And that is not currently the case for Twitter, but it will be.
Is this the battle Twitter should be fighting? Or should we just provide the most standard, boring ads interface and just make it good like Instagram's?
Instagram has an excellent advertising interface. As it's just literally talk to anyone, and they probably, if they're using Instagram at all, they probably bought something last week.
I bought stuff off Instagram ads. Yeah, Facebook has GPUs in the data center too. They're running decent-sized models on people.
I don't think we're trying to split the atom here, you know? We're just literally trying to show people ads for something they might actually want to buy. This is not the Manhattan Project, even though the database weirdly is called Manhattan. This is common sense stuff.
Elon, would it be possible to offer like a more expensive $100 a month version with zero advertisements? I mean, 1% of people might be willing to pay that.
I think it's a no-brainer. This is just a question of what complexity do we add when. Frankly, it's difficult to overstate the difficulty of adding stuff to adding features that should be easy to add are not easy to add because the stack complexity is extremely complex.
Can we do refactors for
My
6
God,
months?
we've made some simplifications even in the last few weeks. It will explode your mind to go through the entire stack. It's like, wow.
Well, but you have to sort of make a trade-off between features and refactoring, right? Like if you have X amount of engineering team, you can decide how you want to allocate that.
Basically, we're going to make significant short-term product improvements in order to have a high velocity of improvement. Unfortunately, I think it's a rewrite is needed. Like if you say, like, look back at old school Apple, you know, when they had their old operating system, and then Jobs came along with OS, OS X. You know, it was a new stack. It wasn't like let's like fool around with the old Apple OS. It was like he just took the next OS, adapted that to Apple, and said, "Yeah, your old software just doesn't work anymore. Too bad."
But an operating system doesn't run at scale. Like this is doable, but I think it'd be pretty hard to do with continuity. To roll out this new stack promising no downtime on a clean rewrite seems very, very hard.
Nonetheless, I think that's what will be needed long term.
You brought up the 20 million lines of Scala before. You mentioned that the microservices have a lot of the complexity of the Twitter system. I believe microservices for complexity, like a system at that scale, won't really.
You're breaking up. You think microservice yes or microservice
no? I'm
no?
fine with the microservices. My concern is the infrastructure or the tech stack that you guys are using, because instead of like using commercial or open source or like any standardized products, you guys have like inbuilt or like in-house your own like implementations of everything. Like sure, you're using Kafka, but your RPC layer is Thrift, which is like developed internally. Your database is Manhattan.
Wait. Thrift is a Facebook product.
Which one?
Thrift is a Facebook product.
We got the TFE, we got the GraphQL, we got the product mixer, we got the ranker,
Yep.
We got the Manhattan database, we got the Strato, we got the TweetyPie, we got the Gizmo Duck, we got the Tweeter Memcache.
And
Well,
then
what else do you
wait till you find out
What
they're
else you
all
want?
built on top of Finatra and Finagle, which are entirely custom Twitter open source Scala projects.
Yeah, I get that.
Oh,
My
and
point is that if you have all of this custom and not like super standardized products, when 80% of your workforce happens to leave, now how much more difficult is it for new people or like even existing people to work with that infrastructure and be able to iterate on it, much less like refactor it?
I think I could do it, but I think it would take me 6 months.
So, George, you mentioned that at Facebook, everything could run locally. I've worked at companies where we had a dedicated team just for developer experience, and their job was like literally to Dockerize and containerize everything and just make the app run. So people that can code can code. And it just sounds like Twitter's lacking that.
Yeah, you want to hire those people for Twitter? I think Twitter's definitely lacking that.
Elon, how far are you guys away from having an engineer, like a new engineer on day one? Just walk in, go through quick orientation, and then get like a single dev instance running, and just being able to submit a PR on the same day, or maybe the same
A
week.
dev instance? No, Twitter doesn't believe in that. We have prod and sometimes staging.
Or local, any kind of local.
It is.
Local.
It takes a while. There's so much custom stuff that just understanding where everything is and how it all connects, I think is a matter. It takes at least a few weeks. I think would be difficult to be productive, without at least a month of intense effort. And that would be like you're really good at software. I'd say if you can do something useful in a month.
I think I understand most of it, but I think a lot of the problems are not a question of understanding. I think they're of just toolings and workflows. The fact that I can't stand up Twitter anywhere except for the data center. For example, some services, when you develop them, they pack. It's a 1.6 gigabyte binary. It has to upload to the data center. That takes 20 minutes. And then you unpack it, and then, 30 minutes later, you've tested your one-line change, and you made a typo.
There's so much complexity and so much interaction across so many different levels. Progress is being made, but it is very difficult to make progress. When you touch like one element of the system, it affects like 17 other elements. One argument in favor of, say, a whole bunch of microservices is if they are truly independent, you can add additional microservices without affecting the rest of the system. But that is not the case at Twitter. Like I said, we have this challenge of trying to add view count to tweets, which I think is really going to make the site pop, because we'll see just how many people actually view your tweets. This is completely normal for video. So if you look at even a video on Twitter, it will actually show you how many views the video has gotten. And that gives you some indication of the popularity of the video, how interested are people in the video. So Twitter has views for videos, but does not have views for tweets. So you can tweet something and think, man, was it like a tweet fell in the forest and nobody heard it? Did anyone see my tweet? Actually, lots of people saw your tweet, but you don't know because they didn't want to put themselves out there by actually liking it or retweeting or replying. So the site will pop in a big way just showing view count of tweets. And people realize, holy smoke, a lot of people actually seeing my tweet. That's cool. And then, like I said earlier, we need to add functionality where you can like a tweet without advertising the fact that you liked it to the world, or being able to say that maybe you didn't like it in a I love that thing happened, like earthquake example. You don't love earthquakes, but it's noteworthy. Putting a heart next to an earthquake, that's weird. You want to have more fidelity in how what you think of a tweet, and you want to have the option of making that how you feel about that tweet public or not public. That's like pretty obvious stuff. But making those changes to the existing Twitter system is very difficult.